Want more than just the headlines? Find out what's going on and what it means with me, Dennis Prager, this morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and obviously a very frightening incident yesterday at Dixon High School where you had a school resource officer engage a would-be shooter, a 19-year-old former student, wounding the shooter and potentially saving untold number of lives for the kids that were doing a walkthrough for graduation.
Yeah, the headlines are a massacre avoided because of the bravery of the police officer. The 19-year-old kid shot at the police officer, according to reports, and the police officer returned fire. He went to stop the gunman, as opposed to other resource officers who would run away.
One of the gym teachers ran in, told everybody to go. He looked white as a ghost. And then all of a sudden, there's just teachers saying, go, 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 get out of here.
And they're also, commending the teachers, too, who did a good job of, shuffling kids out of the area.
Mark Dallas, according to reports, was praised and thanked by more than 100 people who gathered along the Rock River Wednesday night after the would-be shooter was taken into custody. He was charged with 3 Class X felonies last night and is on $2 million bond. For more on this topic, updating us, we're pleased to be joined by the mayor of Dixon. He is Li Arellano, who, by the way, has a service record of his own. He served our country in the armed forces. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Just kind of give us a sense of yesterday, what you were doing as the mayor and what the town was doing in conjunction with the police and the school district when the incident occurred, and then update us on what's happened subsequently.
Absolutely. The first thing to say is, our police department and the school district handled it immensely well. I mean, obviously incidents like that happen so fast. And even as quick a response time as we have, our police department is probably a minute away from the high school. That wouldn't have been enough, if Officer Dallas hadn't been there. So, a lot of it, the key stuff was done by Officer Dallas and actually by the gym teacher, who was the first person to intercept this shooter as he came in. He was just really, really close to the gym where the practices were taken for graduation. The gym teacher had to pop out for something, saw the shooter. I believe that's when the shooter first started, actually firing shots. He was already in the school. Officer Dallas heard it, came running, which, is exactly what you pray happened, that the resource officer's there. Comes running to the scene. That's exactly what he did. The shooter saw him. My understanding is he took off running. As they were running, he chased him outside the building, fired some shots at Officer Dallas. At that point, officer returned fire, was able to take him down. Luckily, nobody was injured. And from that point, it's just about coordinating a response. The teachers did their part, getting students barricaded, getting them out, getting them to safety. So many departments responded, everything from the federal agencies like the ATF, which is, working on tracking down how this guy got that weapon, to, the sheriff, everybody. It was amazing response.
Do you know what weapon he used, and how much ammunition he had on him?
I'm not sure they've released any of those details yet. We don't believe it was some home gun. Let me put it that way. But they're not sure yet. I think that part they're still investigating.
And was he supposed to be there? Because I'm here reading conflicting reports. Was he expelled from Dixon High School taking night classes, and was he supposed to be a part of the graduation?
I don't know. I don't know the details on that. I don't believe he was expelled. That's not my understanding. I saw some reports stating that. Mm-hmm. My understanding was a little different than that. Is that he had some challenges. Was pulled out, was still, I think, actively working. Him and his family were actively working on what could be done. And, I don't know if he was actually supposed to walk or not.
Going back to how this unfolded, the gym teacher. So you said the gym teacher went outside and he first saw him, and that's where the first engagement occurred. So give us whatever detail you have on that engagement, because that's been underreported.
Yeah, no, I think so, and obviously it's still very preliminary. But my understanding is one of the teachers had to step out of, I believe it was the gym or the office or wherever that teacher was at. The shooter was kind of inbound with not very good intent. Saw him, I think recognized that a problem was underway. I don't know exactly what that scene looked like, but that's when the shooter, pulled up and started to make his move. And those shots, to my understanding, are what our resource officer heard.
So was he shooting at the gym teacher? Do we know, or
at the students?
That's my understanding. I'm not. The details are still very preliminary. Did he start shooting indiscriminately? Was he shooting generally, specifically at the teacher? That part I can't speak to yet. But what seems pretty clear is that's the point at which shooting started. And I think for the students, that's a pretty big deal, because he was just feet away from getting into the gym, and the students were gathered in there. They weren't individually in classrooms. Right. A huge mass of our seniors were gathered in the gym to go through practices. One of the things that was interesting talking to my city manager is his daughter was one of the first groups of people right around that door. So things like that are really hitting home. Yeah. And in fact, it's incredible.
What do you think you're going to do as a city to honor Officer Mark Dallas?
Oh man, that was something talked about already, and even on Facebook you could see like this, he shouldn't have to pay for meals, all this stuff going on. Oh. People are just so incredibly appreciative of how he responded, and obviously there's an element of you do your job, but extraordinary way to do your job. Sometimes the job becomes extraordinary, and Officer Dallas really rose to that occasion.
What do we know? What do you know? Maybe some more local knowledge. And obviously the media outlets interviewed some people in Dixon, but on the 19-year-old in custody, who was the assailant in the case, is there any more kind of local color you can give on him? Was this an individual known? Was he known to be, sort of disaffected from the community? That sort of thing.
Just because of where the investigation's at, I probably can't comment on any of that stuff. Okay. That's I don't want to get in the way of the DA. As you mentioned, there's some felonies charged, and I think they're going to take care of that.
Yeah, his mom had said that he was ostracized at school and left to finish his credits outside of his class. And what's strange is, I know in a small town everybody knows everybody, but Julie Milby knows the police officer who shot her son, and she was grateful to him yesterday for not killing her son. Did you hear that interview?
Yeah, I did see some of that, and some of the things that have come, as you mentioned, there's some conflicting reports, and from my vantage point, sometimes you just have to watch things unfold and shake your head at some of it. Obviously, people are trying to get out as much information as possible, but some of it I'm not sure is quite accurate. But then again, that's why we have the systems in place we do. And I'll say it's pretty amazing knowing what's happened in some other communities. What I really felt was relief. It was a stressful day. It was a long day. There was a lot of coordination. But through the whole thing, I was just incredibly relieved because everybody lived through the day. And that's something that we were incredibly blessed at here in Dixon.
I know no class today, which is understandable. When are the kids going to go back to school? Do you know?
I talked to the school superintendent. I think their goal is to get things as normalized as quickly as possible. Obviously, they've arranged for some counseling services and things of that nature. So I think they're going to give it a couple days, and I'm not sure if they're going to be back at it on Monday or if they're going to try even earlier than that. They feel the students have been through enough, and they want to keep it as on track as possible. Yeah. So I think either by the end of this week or the beginning of next week, they're going to start getting things moving again.
And Mayor, I wanted you to hear this and our listeners to hear. It's a student, Evelyn Ebersol, who is so grateful for Officer Mark Dallas.
I think it was very brave of him. I think you hear stories of officers hiding, not doing anything, and that's not what he did. He went and he faced the problem head on.
There must have been a lot of tears, and just when parents were reunited with their kids yesterday is probably something you'll never forget.
No, and he truly is a hero. The day just could have gone so differently if Officer Dallas hadn't been there. If Mark hadn't been where he was, and if he hadn't responded in the way he did, there are a lot of families, an entire community that would be dealing with an entirely different incident. And unfortunately, we know what that incident looks like because we've seen it in other communities. So, he's amazing, and we're so glad he was there and was able to do what he did.
He is Dixon Mayor Li Arellano. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.